Hi there, and welcome to today's episode where we welcome a good friend of ours and someone that we both, with Natalie, know in person. We've met him several times. And for me, this is one of the few first people that I've ever met when I lived in Cambridge. One of the few people that I really have connected early on. Someone I have always looked up to, I've learned so much from. And so I'm so grateful and so excited to welcome to the show today, Jim Doyle. How do you describe Jim? How do you summarize who Jim is and what he does? Because such an interesting person with an incredible life, with a wealth of knowledge. He is what I would call a business whisperer. He is enabling businesses and personal performance. He is helping people unlock their blockages, working with their energy, but also going beyond just the energy to help remove any kind of a blocks on people, on horses, on businesses, on houses. So this conversation is maybe a little bit out there, but also very practical for all of us, sometimes feeling stuck and sometimes feeling like we're not moving forward with our lives the way we would want. So please come and join us in this wonderful, long-awaited conversation with Jim.
But before we get started, here's your gentle reminder. Hit that subscribe button, like and share these videos because we really want to reach as many people as we can. And for those of you who are already subscribed, thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. So hit subscribe, like and share, and also hit that little notification bell because then you get reminded of when we upload a new episode. But now let's get on with this beautiful conversation with a very dear friend to myself and to Lenka. So it's been lovely to have a conversation with them again.
Hi, Jim. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm really good, and I'm looking forward to this show. And we can talk about the weather wherever you are, and we can address all kinds of amazing issues.
And I'm excited to see what things we're going to talk about because we have known each other for quite a while. And I know a little bit of your story and journey and transformation, but every single time I'm blown away by learning more and by seeing where life and world and, your curiosity has taken you. So, for my benefit, as well as Natalie's and our listeners, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? You can go as deep into the history as you want to tell us your life story, or you can tell us where you are right now, what have you landed on, and what it is that really gives you the fire and the excitement every single day to be like, this is what I do, this is who I am, and this is what motivates me.
Well, thank you. I will keep it short and condensed because I could go on at length. Um, okay, so I didn't do what my parents expected. This is a short version, which was to be a farmer and all that kind of thing in Ireland. And I wanted to do at a very early age. I wanted to do electronics. Oh my God, what's that? And to be fair to everybody concerned, I managed to achieve exactly that and ended up in Cambridge, UK, of all places, which was the Cambridge phenomenon. It was amazing, and it was everything and more than I could possibly have dreamed of for that. But on my journey along the way, in my early 20s, I had a rather profound experience. I was, funny enough, near where you are at the moment, I believe, Lenka. I was in the Channel Islands and on holiday, and I woke up at night with a very strong impression of flames and my dad being upset. And he didn't do the upset thing very often. He was like, cool. So I, big pocket of coins then, phoned the village store and found that my parents' home in Ireland, 250 odd miles away, had been burnt to the ground that night. So I picked, and they were okay, and my family were okay as you can be when your house is burnt down. But that, funnily enough, scared the hell out of me, in plain English. And in parallel with my career and everything else, exploration of that, I was shown that I was intuitive, a natural healer, all kinds of things. So one of the things I was shown fairly quickly was that with somebody with a pain in the shoulder, I could sort of pull it down and sort of at their fingertips, which was all a little bit like, really exciting. Oh my God, I've got magic powers, and terrifying at the same time. And running that in parallel with my electronics and insight and so on. So that was a fascinating start to my journey. But that became a very powerful part of it. And I remember on one occasion when I was working at a particularly high-tech um, organization, still functioning and functioning very well in Cambridge. I was working beside a colleague of mine on something exotic to do with satellite comms and so on. And I was aware of what he was doing, and he was aware of what I was doing. He said, "Oh, I can't get this to work." And I said, "Oh, I just got, you need to change that component, drop it 3%. Okay, that worked, things like that. Then there was one day I answered his question that he hadn't yet asked. And then then the stories began. It was like, so I sort of shut down. Anyway, long story short, many years later, around the millennium, my inner scream, I suppose, got loud enough that so still doing my electronics and various other things, got loud enough that I had to do something about it. So Mind, Body, Spirit show, met some amazing people, ended up training extensively and expensively in ancestral healing, which was for them to heal my challenges, to help resolve my problems. It didn't matter whether it was physical, mental, spiritual, whatever. Just yeah, that's where the problems are coming up. We can fix you, Jim. It was like, and that was a truly astonishing and scary journey. And at the time, I was self-employed and young family, and like spending loads of money and going a little bit meh, maybe. Anyway, got to the end of this, and which was an astonishing journey. And I had this I learned a lot, huge amount of stuff. It was all disjointed. I was empty in here. And I heard about an introductory weekend on energy healing. Like, oh, that feels good. Went to that. And by the Saturday night, I knew I had to do a 3-year course. Young family, self-employed, just spent a load of money, blah, blah, blah. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Astonishing, intensive 5 weeks a year residential for 3 years. And incredible things happened. And that became the focus, the base, the focus of my life inside all the electronic stuff. And since then, I've, with a few colleagues, evolved over that period of time. So now what I do is and have done extensively, is use those exact same principles of identifying what the root causes of a problem, not just for people, whether it's mind, body, spirit, whatever it is, but also for businesses, for properties that won't sell, for properties that are uncomfortable to live in and won't sell. You name it. I've been astonishing spin-off and side effects from some of those activities as well. So I suppose if you were to ask me how would you describe what I do, I'd say what I do is I work at peak performance for people and businesses to actually find that little bit just that little bit you've been ignoring all your life, or that one over there, and then we can work with that and make it go away.
I love how you now summarize kind of, very clearly for us and our listeners that are probably some of the underlying things that connect all of the things that you do. As you said, you've trained extensively, you've explored and practiced so many different modalities, and you've tapped into so many different sources of wisdom. And yet, I love that you were like, yet usually the theme among your clients and the circumstances and businesses you get invited into, it's there is something holding us back. There is something that we've been ignoring that that is manifesting then in so many different ways. And I would love to explore this idea a little bit more. How does it happen that we ended up ignoring things. That there's this itch that we kind of, don't scratch, or we develop a fear of something that manifests in a different way, or we have this challenge that we're ignoring. What are the things that we as humans do to ourselves, and by extents to ourselves, to our environment and to our businesses and to our people around us, that we can learn and we can start unpacking together?
That's a really good question. And what I often see is that uh, people or therapists or various people trying to resolve issues, they're trying to resolve what the problem is. The way I tend to work, so one of the techniques I use is dowsing or kinesiology. So in terms of, you ask a question and your body feels strong or weak, etc., etc. So it's all straightforward stuff once you get your head around it. Yeah. And it's incredibly simple. A 2-year-old can do it, probably. Yeah, probably better than most adults. And that's part of the key. But I don't try to find out what the problem is. If somebody comes to me and says, Jim, my life's a mess, or, my legs dropped off, or I keep getting run over by a bus, I should check where you're going first. And never joke about that, because somebody had been run over by a bus, but fortunately not injured. What I look for is, when did the problem originate? So if, one of you said to me, Jim, I've got this problem with, my van keeps breaking down other than needing replacing, or, I'm lacking in confidence on stage, or when I'm in this particular situation, or when, I have to speak to a group of people, more than 30 people, I'm terrified. But okay, below that, yeah. Or I've come across the opposite as well, where very few people, somebody's afraid. Somewhere something happened, or we inherited some kind of belief or program or memory that's under the surface. We're not aware of it. And when those circumstances come up, this hidden program kind of goes, ping, hey, remember that bit? And that's what comes up. So what I do, for example, if somebody says, I've got this problem, then I say, let me have a look. And I go, okay, is it now? Is it theirs? Sometimes it's not theirs. They've taken it on as a program or a conditioning. Not that you're going to do this or never going to do this. It's just that they've taken it on board as a belief system. And again, so that's one interesting one. But then, when does it come from? Is it before they are 10? No, before 20? Before they're 30? Oh, so it's between 20 and 30. And then fine tune it. I'd just like to keep it within about a year, not try and be too clever, because life gets too complicated. And so what happened when you were 23 years old? 22, 24, and they go, oh, I don't want to talk about that. That's okay. I don't need to talk about it either. But how do you feel when you think about that period in time? And then the body, 9 times out of 10, goes, oh, I've got this funny tension here in my shoulder or in my heart or stomach or whatever. And then we can, in most cases, work around that. Yeah. And effectively focus on their bodily reaction, which changes their energy. And if we can get that to a simplified, a much gentler and easier way, then most likely the problem area has reduced as well. So if there's just one cause, sometimes there are several, and you get the body feeling related to that, having identified it, to reduce by 50%, then the problem is probably reduced by 50% as well. Yeah. And I can also quantify that as well. So with that per se, okay, so say I'm working with one of you about the problem. Okay. So it was affecting you when we started at maybe a 7 out of 10. Yeah. Well, fairly serious. And now we've done some work and it's feeling a bit better. And it's like, oh, maybe it's a 3 out of 10. It could be a bit more. Is there something else in the same category? Yeah. Or even a different category? Yeah. and work with that, and away it goes. Sometimes it's even simpler than that, and sometimes it's really wacky. Um, and far from being wacky, I've worked with a number of people where I've identified issues going back maybe 3 months before birth. Something's happened, it's a very specific time event. Ask the mum, "Oh my goodness, XYZ happened," yeah, and get that cleared, and then I work distantly and remotely in meditation on that to clear the energy. So I'm like reaching back for where the energy is, asking for help from my lovely friends upstairs, yeah, to get that cleared. And when that's cleared, and it appears to be cleared, usually, and I guess, that the problem has gone away or dramatically reduced, whatever that problem is.
It's really fascinating what you're talking about energy, and energy is something we don't see with our eyes. It's something that, when you talk about energy work, and I'm sure you've come across this, is, that look, that glazed look, and that like, huh? He's like, he's lost the plot,
Yeah.
and woo woo, and
Yeah.
all these connotations that are given, because when you working with energy, it is not a physical thing. You can't just literally go back in the past or crawl under a van and fix it. That's the physical bit. But when you actually doing the energy, that's something very different, because it's not necessarily belief. It's not something you can see, but we are all energy beings. We all radiate energy, receive energy, whether it's humans, whether it's a plant, animal, everything has energy. Stones, everything has energy, and there's even energy going backwards and forwards amongst the three of us, but it's not like you can see it or anything. So for our listeners, and I mean, like, Lenka's known you for a while, I've known you for a while, we've had conversations in the past, but for our listeners, can you maybe dig a little bit into what is energy, or the energy work? Because you have explained with kinesiology. Oh, that's a word I always trip up over. But maybe a little bit on what the energy is, or how you perceive it or work with it, or sort of for those who've maybe not necessarily heard about energy, or they've got a clue maybe about the energy, but just wanting a little bit more clarification or a little bit more understanding, to help our listeners to embrace the idea of energy work, or that we receive and express energy. But like I said, it's not something you can see. It's not like you can see the wind blowing the leaves, and I'm just getting that from your palm behind you. But you can sometimes walk into a room and speak to somebody, and you just get this like weird feeling, or you just want to be around people because they radiate that type of energy. If you can just sort of maybe dig a little bit deeper into that to clarify a little bit, especially for those who maybe, you got an idea, but you're not sure of it.
Okay. Well, going back to what you said about the energy in a room or whatever, I think one way of looking at it is that energy is something that is there all the time. It's not an alternative universe. It is a real reality that we live in. We're right in the middle of it all the time. But we are, I mean, maybe your kids, or you know of kids, or you remember when you had a certain sort of awareness of things. Don't be silly. It's all conditioned out of you. That's weird stuff. You don't talk about that. Yeah. And you get this social conditioning in, well, all cultures, to the best of my knowledge, where the thing is, if you're coming from an energetic viewpoint of transparency and thinking like a 2-year-old, so where you haven't got any agendas going, yeah, all of a sudden you're not controllable in that way, because you can be aware of things that see behind the scenes of what's actually going on. So if you take, say, a business, right, it's not performing. You've got the relationships, you've got the thoughts and so on, and the past stuff. And if you come back to say, right, okay, you're struggling with your business ceiling, say, right? And I've worked with a few, sorry, I've spoken to some businesses who didn't actually want to go there, because when I said they'd gone there to quite a decent level for the size of the business, and they drifted down, and they really needed to get back and go up through there. And I said, well, just working with one of them, and I said to them, well, yeah, you and your colleague, something happened about, I don't know, 14 months ago. And it's like you set a belief system or a mindset that you didn't want to go any higher than your individual ones, higher than half that level you hit. And then you went, yep. So you need to work with that, and I can do that. The person I was speaking to didn't want to work with it. So that's one thing. As you mentioned about, you go into a room and it feels awful, but you don't know why. That's an awareness you have. So you could call it a sixth sense. I'd call it a seventh, because this whole sixth sense thing is widely exploited, as it were, and rubbish. We've all got it. And I worked with somebody's, well, a couple of meeting rooms actually, separately. One was a shared meeting room with a couple of small businesses in a large older building. And the owner of one of the businesses said, it's like explosive. Every time anybody goes in there, like, explosive argument. And I went there working with a colleague and did some, shall we say, just to go slightly off piste, tuned into the place. First of all, I went, oh my God, the energy there is horrendous, right? Without Zoom or whatever. And ended up, I knew they needed to have a large crystal of some kind or other. So this particular company employees, who were very aware, very tuned in, could actually use that as a central focus. Yeah. So we went down, worked with the company, went into this room, and he was like, oh, it was like the fuse was lit and it was about to go boom. Yeah. Did some work, yeah, with our friends, got the energy clear, brought them in for a small little ceremony and belief system. And as they walked in the door, it said, oh my God, it's completely different. Yeah. And, and it was gone. And another one was a meeting room where, so an office building, where whenever anybody came into the office, they were all whispering, quiet and friends, almost as if they were afraid somebody was looking over their shoulder. But there's no obvious reason for it. But again, that cleared the energy, and the person in question was quite amazed. So that is energy. So it's static energy. It's dynamic. You've got, so if you're standing at the bus stop, minding your own business at the train station, and you think, somebody's looking at me, and you turn around and you see the eyes go away, and you know they were looking at you. How did you know? You have that awareness, you have that feeling. There may be somebody you don't like. They've never done it. You just see them, you go, ooh. Or you feel it. Yeah, your gut tells you, they're a horrible person. Or you've got a dog with you and they go, "Arr," and you think, uh-oh. That's energy. Do not underestimate dogs. All of that is energy. And again, you also have a different form of physical energy, but it affects you. It's like the people have difficulty with computers, with electromagnetic radiation, with mobile phones. That's a very real thing. And in a lot of cases, what I find is that people who've had trauma, not necessarily horrendous trauma, but something has happened somewhere along the way. Maybe in a womb, maybe it's old stuff, family stuff, etc. But you've heard of out of the body experience. Yeah. Like being on stage and sort of out of the body, or on the operating table, and you can see him doing things. Yeah. Well, what happens is that is very often the case, and people are sort of partly out of their body, or very significantly so, and they never come back again. And what happens is that we as an individual feel unsafe out there. So we retreat into our core, or in some cases, go, not even safe in here. Yeah. What happens as a result? Cold hands, cold feet, peripheral neuropathy. I've worked with, I've lost count of the number of people with that. And when that energy is cleared, in a lot of cases, it's literally like they can feel the blood flow coming back in again. Yeah. Because the life force or the energy, whatever, is coming back into all the physical cells, all the nerves and everything are there. And it works. So there's that side. So when you are slightly traumatized or seriously traumatized, you may or are very likely to be more sensitive to uh, other people's vibes around you and or electromagnetic radiation, phones, mobile systems, all that kind of thing. Yeah. And relationships. Oh, yes, sorry. Relationship cords. So at an energetic level, when you have a close relationship with somebody, there is what appears to be a sort of lightish cord going between two people when all is well. It can be red, it can have a steel cord, it can have knots in it, it can be all over, which reflects the relationship, the state of the relationship between them. It may have been good once, they got divorced, whatever, something happened. And that applies in business as well.
As you were speaking, just thinking for myself and Lenka, but also for our listeners is, you've been immersed in this for years. I mean, you mentioned the millennium and, even before then, is how does one start to really become aware of the energy? I know we get these sort of gut feelings about people that we meet or rooms and that, and it's not necessarily a conscious thing. And then we're very clever at letting our brains override everything, and then it's like, it's nothing, or I've got to have the meeting in there, so just suck it up and go have the meeting. But how can one start to really notice and be aware and almost allow the body to lead and learn to just say to the brain, okay, listen here, there's something here. What can I get from it? Or what is it telling me, without allowing that brain to just override and just say, oh, it's nothing, or it's not important, or don't deal with it, or you're going to look like somebody who's lost the plot, or not allow this bit to take control, but actually to start to really feel. And I use the word listen because I know your ears are in the brain bit, but feel and listen to what your body is saying or what you're feeling, and finding a way to work with it or to become more aware of it. Because I think when we start to become aware of things, we can then slowly work through them or understand them. So what can people start to do to become more aware of it and to just turn the brain off a little bit?
I suppose it's like what used to be an advert for safely crossing the road, the green cross code, stop, look and listen. The difficulty a lot of people have is being able to stop. And it's become particularly difficult in the last 20 odd years or thereabouts. Number one, these little devices, phones, it keeps disappearing, and computers. There's more information than we could ever have imagined, way beyond our belief. Bang, bang, bang in our face all the time, and TV. A little thing that we practiced from some years ago, just getting ourselves together, was a very simple thing. I read a book by an Australian chap whose name I can't remember, but I'll tell you if it comes to mind. But it was about just getting your life together, and just starting your day off right, and then you go through your day, and then you close your day down. And one of the key things was setting yourself a fixed bedtime. Now, there's all the other ones about writing a journal and getting up an hour early and doing your meditation and etc., which are all good things. Yeah. But the most valuable one we found was, myself and my wife, was quite simply go to bed at a fixed time, right? Jump. And so for the last half hour or so, you don't watch TV. Now, I don't really remember, I'm an engineer, sensitive and everything else. I don't really subscribe to this blue light stuff on screens, yeah, as being important. And the reason is it's very easy scientifically to measure that because you vary the blue light content and you can measure your various hormones changing, etc. But what you can't measure is a direct, because you can't quantify, is the garbage you watch with all the emotional stirring up, which is designed to do, which gets you wound up, and then your head's going round and round and round as you go to bed, right? So, number one, I'd highly recommend this, is try and, as much as you can, as often as you can, get a fixed bedtime, yeah? And visualize and try and get your partner, whoever, into it as well, you know, assuming you're not by yourself. And literally to practice, there are all kinds of techniques online. Just practice just breathing in slowly. And as you breathe out, just imagine sort of all the stray energy and the bzzz in your body and around in the space around you. Literally, as you breathe out, you just as if you're breathing it out through your feet and out that way. So you just breathe in and then breathe out and all down through your feet, and just let all that CRAP disappear out through your feet as much as you can, and the tension and everything else. And if you can do that, that's a good way to do it. And okay, you know, first problem is your partner may say, "You're nuts. I'm not going to do that." Well, there's a little opportunity for working on the energy between you there. And you've got to take responsibility for yourself, and you have to start somewhere. Yeah, and you probably can dive in, but you may get a hell of a shock. That's a good start. And the other one is on the day-to-day basis is like you're going into a meeting with the boss or yet another meeting you've got a lead or whatever. Bit of the old deep breath, breathe all that rubbish and fears down through your feet, down into the earth. Don't worry about who's underneath you if you're on the 72nd floor. Yeah. They won't notice. Yeah. Just do that. And you being centered. Yeah. Rather than just, what are they going to say? What, you know, oh my God, am I in trouble again? You know, oh, I should have done this, or did I leave the kettle on? Breathe. Maybe I did. If I did leave the kettle on, better phone somebody or go and do something about it. But that's the start of coming back to being in touch with yourself in a cool, calm way. If you're madly chopping the veggies for supper or whatever it is, maybe don't do both at the same time if you're already angry with somebody, because otherwise you might have extra bits of carrots around your chopping board.
Oh, that's really good. And breathing is such a powerful exercise, whether it's to de-stress, whether it's to calm down, and like you said, to recenter yourself and to start to be aware. So I guess when people are doing this breathing and, you know, imagining the, as you said, the CRAP going up, you know, from the bottom of their feet, then it's starting to become aware of what's happening, what's going on around them. And the one question that's come to mind is, when the energy that's around us and emotions, how connected are they? Because I'm sure that when you feel something that's energetic, it impacts your emotions. And my thinking is, and do correct me if I'm wrong, is when you're feeling something like one of your emotions going on, it could be an effect of an energy that's coming your directions. Because sometimes you can just be sitting there merrily, I don't know, knitting and minding your own business, and all of a sudden you just want to take your knitting needle and stab the first person who walks into the room for no reason, or you you just burst out laughing, and if anybody did walk into the room would think, oh, she's sitting on her own, woohoo. First sign of going crazy, she's sitting there laughing. So it's I guess it's starting to have an understanding of your relation, of your emotions, but then also is what's bringing that about. Is there an energy around you that is impacting you? Is it something? So how connected are energy and your emotions?
Totally. They are totally connected, but there can be external influences. So let's just take the case of the us, first of all. So you're sitting there, not thinking about stabbing anybody, and all of a sudden you want to stab them and put red wool through them or something like that. So probably you're doing your thing, you're focusing, and you weren't thinking of anything. You just weren't aware of what you were thinking about. Maybe there was a little noise came in from next door or in through the window or something or other, and that triggered you. That went ding, ding, takes you straight back to some kind of recollection you have, which made you really angry. It could have been when you were tiny, or possibly not even yours, but let's assume it's yours. Yeah. So something has triggered that. And if it makes you happy and you want to burst out laughing, well, you know what they say, just do it. um, but if you feel like bursting into tears, which of course happens to everybody, and for those of the listeners who are thinking, well, it doesn't happen to me, maybe spend a little bit more time in nature and practice some deep conscious breathing with your phone off, conscious turned off, not just on standby, for at least an hour. Think you could manage that? It'll probably help. But so if you suddenly feel like bursting into tears, you're not necessarily depressed or whatever, you're just having a moment. Does it feel bad? Well, I mean, there's 1,000 questions. So feel into it. Is not the problem isn't here. The problem is somewhere else. And I'd say just breathe in again. And there's a question you asked earlier, we didn't get around to, a big one. And breathe out whatever the tension is. It's all about the body. It's all about the feelings. Like you said at the beginning, and like I think we've all said, we live here most of the time in the modern world, and it's all about, I'll do my King Kong bit. It's all about being in the body and understanding what's going on. So paying attention to the feelings, and we're generally told, particularly men, not to pay attention to our emotions. Men don't have emotions. Big boys don't cry. Little boys don't cry, etc. Yeah. And there are lots of women like that as well. And there are so many fallacies about how we supposedly feel. But there was this question you asked earlier on about I've lost it now because I'm trying to focus on one thing and go back to where we were. You asked something very earlier on about being in our head and so on, which is where we are in Offload. We've got to try and bring those thoughts. Consider it as our emotions and our thoughts are all related as a loop. Yeah. So you have a sad thought, and somewhere or other you feel that in your body. Your body goes, oh, and your mind goes, oh my God, last time I had that, I got beaten up or shouted at or something like that. And you go, oh, that's worse. And you go, in some people, it's an extreme case, and you feed them medication and it all doesn't go away because all it does is interrupt the process. That's a whole deeper situation. So it's the mind-body loop all the time. But as you said, you can have external influences, but the first thing is to look at is the problem really you in the first place? And it's not a problem, it just is. Yeah, it just is. we're all different. We come from different cultures, different countries. It doesn't matter if we're in the same family. It doesn't matter if we're brothers and sisters. We're still all different. Yeah. And trying to figure out why, well, good luck with that one. So you just have to pay attention with yourself about the feeling and the thoughts, and learning more about how to get started, I think was what you said earlier on, Natalie. Paying attention to what's going on. Look, I feel like bursting into tears every time I pass by, I don't know, Tesco's, yeah? Or something, or I see a pine tree on top of a hill, something about that. So just feel into the feeling, just breathe into it and go, oh, I just got confused. It's actually really quite nice. And probably then the tears go away.
I think you're really nicely touching on exactly where we are right now in the world, where we are so much just either moving forward, we're thinking about the future, we're living back in the future, or we're worrying about what happened in the past. We're not in the present, and that's where these things often catch us because we're not present, we're not mindful in the moment. We're
Hmm.
always in our heads, we're always, running 1,000 miles an hour. We're always trying to juggle all those things that are happening in our lives, and we do not take the time to pay attention,
Hmm.
be aware, get grounded, get settled. And I also see this often reflecting then in we procrastinate, we self-sabotage, we are in the loop of self-fulfilling prophecy because we take the experiences we've already had as the proof of what's going to happen in the future. We look at, well, this is how I've always been, and this is how my reality has always been, so I'm predicting my future based on it. What would you say to people who kind of have this mindset of, well, the future is given by what has already happened, but I empirically can prove that, I've tried this and experienced this and done this and failed. I have a proof of the past. So, well, the future will just follow the same pattern. Like, how can people step out of this limiting belief that stops them, that makes them procrastinate, self-sabotage, avoid dealing with stuff because they're living in the past and comparing their future. They're making the connection, direct linear connection between the past and the future are directly linked, and I have no other way of being other than fulfilling the prophecy of my past.
That's a really good question. And yep, I've met lots of people like that. And going back to where I started about myself, I know lots of people like that, yeah, from where I grew up and so on. Yet the world has changed, and it's changed lots, and they've changed with it. But they're still in that sort of kind of bubble like you just described. But that's their choice because it's back to, okay, call it the law of attraction or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. You get what you focus on. Yeah. But what you're actually doing is you're putting up boundaries. You're saying, well, I can't do that and I can't do that. I'm not allowed to do that. And a really big thing that comes up so often, you want to change habits, you want to get well, you want to get rid of the pain in your back, blah, 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 etc. Yeah. You want to sell your house. Seriously, these are all real. Number one question, do you have permission? Of course I have bloody permission. Yeah? Rubbish. Can you tell me, do they have permission? No. Out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 5 out of 10 that haven't got permission. And they got spit, splutter, etc. Yeah? So next question is, when they've stopped spitting and spluttering, when does it come from? Or where does it come from? Yeah. And it's not necessarily the teacher at school or the parents or whatever, or the grandmother. It can be weird and wacky, like you said, Natalie, about the sort of energies influencing you. It can be one of the things I work with is earth energies. Yeah. Because you can have, like you can hold energy. So I'll just go on to this for a moment. You can hold energy in a particular part of your body. So generally we go, gut feeling. Yeah. But you can have a dodgy shoulder. but you didn't have it 3 months ago. You only started a month ago. Whereas you speak to Jim and he said, so I've got this dodgy shoulder, Jim. What's going on? Oh, hang on, let me see. Which one is it? Right one. Okay. That's probably to do with a man. Okay, was it about a month ago? From family member? No, somebody else, somebody at work. Somebody at work. So some man at work. Oh yeah, I had this argument with my boss. Yeah. And specific parts of your body can hold energy, emotions, relationship cords hooked in, weird stuff, honestly. But they can be cleared and bingo, the problem goes away. Yeah. So the energy of where you live or the dodgy office or meeting room or whatever can be affecting you. And it's not necessarily about who, say, your employer or your colleagues are. It's the actual place you're in or your home. And it may be affecting, your favorite armchair where you sit in front of the telly. It happens. All of those can affect your energy, can affect specific parts of your body. But in terms of the changes, you said, Lenka, so the last 6 years since lockdown has changed the world because a lot of people had to face aspects of themselves they never even had to consider about sort of going inside and facing aspects of themselves, or most people did, that they never considered. Now, what I've found over the last 6 years with myself, I had very bad COVID and quite a number of other people I've worked with, is that this business of holding energy in particular parts of your body is very specific. So it could be around your blood, your circulation. I'm not talking about those things necessarily. We'll leave those out of the conversation. Yeah. But simply COVID. Astonishing changes, and I don't mean good ones, but in some cases, it's as if when you were in your earlier years, more than 6 years ago, you might have had a very minor tendency to do good things or bad things or whatever in your life. Yeah. What COVID has done in some cases, in my experience, is it's like it takes that little particular tendency you have and goes, boom, and magnifies it. And your behavior changes totally, or your health changes totally. And that can be changed as well. That can be cancelled out. Not fun, not my favorite occupation. So that can happen. So all these things can affect us in lots of different ways. As far as energy in places is concerned, and coming back to trees and people, I worked with somebody's house, which was really heavy energy. It was complicated, lots of things, including about 100 meters away, possibly less than that. They said, "Oh, did anyone tell you about the crash bomber?" Oh, is that what that funny energy is? Oh, just over there. And he was seriously bad. Anyway, did a lot of deep work with this. What I found out 4 years later was that there was an old plum tree and an old apple tree in this little garden beside the house, which they were going to cut down because they were really old and not producing any fruit. And for the following 4 years, the branches were in danger of breaking off with the amount of fruit that was growing on them. I was like, what? And I went back 7 years later and I'm still doing the same thing. So, and that wasn't a consciously aspect of working with the trees or the orchard there. He was just working with the whole thing and bringing balance and harmony back into the place. And all of a sudden, boom, yeah.
Is nature's very much more, I think, impacted by the energies because they don't have the brain a tree doesn't sit there and think, well, I've just got to deal with this.
Back to the 2-year-old, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes, this is my belief or anything. They just feel the energies and you change the energies, which means that in that example that you gave, the plum tree and the apple tree received a clearer and a better energy, so therefore produced more fruit. And it shows you how energy can really impact, and doesn't just impact us. It impacts, you can see around in nature when there's good energies around or not so good
Mm.
energies, because it does have an impact on them. And animals are really good at, I use the word seeing energy very lightly. It's, you
Yeah.
can see how your animals are behaving to what could potentially be going on, or just becoming aware of that. And I mean, this is such a beautiful topic, and it's such a huge topic, because it's not something that you can see, and it's very much on perspective and awareness and everything else. And of course, we can talk for hours and hours about energy and everything else, but I know that we have been here quite a while. So this is where I want to now step into our gold nugget. Jim, may we please have your gold nugget?
Well, gold. Why is gold so valuable? It's how we perceive it. And it isn't at the moment because the price went up and went down like that. Um, the golden nugget, I think I have been so lucky in achieving what I wanted in ways that I didn't even know yet, but challenges along the way. But the key thing comes back to being self-aware and not being totally driven by all the stuff going on above your throat, yeah, or possibly just below your throat because it does strange things and says things now and again, um, and being able to access to the best of your ability and appreciate the silence within rather than the row, rather than the noise, and but especially to not just say, my good feeling says so, but to actually pay attention to it. And if it helps you, then by all means, keep a little journal, notebook. Okay, that's a bit dated. Yeah, file on your computer, password protected, so people you know don't see what you're writing down, where you're learning your feelings, reactions, your weirdness by other people's standards, maybe even by your own. But there's nothing wrong about getting to know yourself, and when the CRAP is a problem, again, feel into it. Just take your time. But the key thing is, as much as you possibly can, try and spend time with nature, with animals, with trees, with whatever it is. I spoke to somebody quite recently who is an amazing person, and they grew up in inner city somewhere, and they are only now beginning to really appreciate and understand and connect to nature and animals, and they're really, really excited about it. I grew up with that. I grew up on a farm. You know, I grew up that was my second nature. That's not a pun. I grew up with that as my second nature, and as much as you possibly can. And if you can find a group who maybe they just go walking or cycling or swimming or wild water swimming, if there's any good wild water to swim in, um, then do so when you can. Not necessarily about any particular sport, is what suits you and your circumstances and you can access. And come back to you and your space in life. And the other thing is, I have this occasionally. Oh, God, really? Had enough. Okay, why have I had enough? Oh, how much of what I'm doing is really for me, and how much of what I'm doing is really for the rest of the world? And given the nature of the work I do, you can guess which way that goes. So when you feel a bit down, underappreciated, whatever it is. Come back to your breathing, feel into the good feeling or the whatever it is. And if there's just something old comes up or you remember something when you were little, just breathe into that and just breathe it out, like I said earlier on. Breathe it in, breathe it out, and let it go. And come back to being you. When you're going to sleep, when you're waking up. Yeah. And in between, try and do it as well.
This is why we love our gold nuggets, and it is about, I love how you say come back to you, and just that self-awareness and just coming back to you. So thank you so much for that. We really appreciate your wonderful gold nuggets. And now for our listeners, if they want to find out more about what it is that you do or understand a bit more about energy work, or maybe they're selling their house and they're not managing it, where can people find you?
My website is differentlight.org. And you might say, why .org? Because that felt right at the time when I set it up. So differentlight.org, and that covers a number of aspects of what I do and what is how I may be able to help. I'm also on YouTube. There's a link. There are some links on there from the website and LinkedIn. And I'm at the moment quiet on Instagram, but I can be found on Instagram as well.
And obviously, we will put all the links in the description below so people can just go and click and find you wherever they want to. So thank you so much, Jim, for being here today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and listen to you and learn from you. But here on this podcast, we're a bit greedy, and we always try to squeeze in one more question. And because our mission is all about finding more life in one's life, we're kind of looking for ways and exploring stories of people who have, in their own way, found ways to have live happier, healthier, more fulfilling lives. I'm always curious to know what gives you life right now, what it is. It can be personal, it can be hobby, it can be work related, it can be something completely wild that you are obsessed with right now and you feel like this is giving me life.
Well, very strangely, completely strangely, what I'm actually doing at the moment, I'm in the process of investigating, and it looks like of actually going with it. And it looks like I can actually achieve putting in solar power and air source heating in our house. Even though it's not a brand new super one, but it looks like it will actually work. And I realized the other day that that actually gives me a sense of independence and freedom. It's like a lifting, it's like paying off your mortgage. Yeah, so like a lifting of the weight, not necessarily super cheap, but also because I work with people who are electrosensitive and so on, and some colleagues have said, yeah, there's going to be all this dirty electricity and horrible stuff happening. I said, no, it won't. So practice what I preach.
Thank you for that, and good luck with putting it all in place and getting it. And I'm all for coming out of the system and being as independent as possible, which solar panels will enable to cut down bills and to not be so reliant on organizations and systems. So thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for being here. And I know it's been a long journey to get to having this conversation. We've had a few ups and downs and technical issues over the months, but it's always great when we finally get to have the conversations, and it's been really wonderful. And you shared some really good advice and tips for myself and Lenka, but as well for our listeners. And we really appreciate you sharing your energy with us and your time. So thank you so much for being with us today, Jim.
Thank you so much. An absolute pleasure.
And for our listeners, what have you got from today? We spoke about energy, and energy is not something that you can see. So is energy something that you've come across and you want to know more about, or are you thinking, what? No, this is totally woo-woo and way off the scale? Or are you somewhere in the middle where you've heard about it and you want to learn more? there's so much more in life as we are learning with more and more of our guests. And we would love to know your thoughts or your journey with energy and listening to yourself, or starting to, I use the word seeing, even though you can't see it, but seeing how energy is impacting your life. We'd love to hear. So, share with us, write in the comments. But until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.